Okay, here's a quick tutorial on using the online dispatch log. You should have an icon that when you go into the log, it will open several tabs for you up top. They're all the same. They're all the starting points for the dispatch calls. And recently updated all the officers and clients on September 2nd, so the list on the drop down should be pretty accurate. You start with the drop down on the call type. We'll start with call for service. When you click on that, it populates all the blocks that you need to be able to input the information for that call. You can either click on the boxes or you can tab over on the boxes. The drop down, they're alphabetically listed on property names. If you needed to put in Waikiki Village, then if you press W on the keyboard, it will come up with the first W alphabetically. And it just happens to be the Waikiki Village was the only one. So you click over. Now this is a caller that calls in. This is not the officer. So I'm going to put in a name, throw in a phone number, unit number if it's applicable, and the call type. Now, depending on what you pick here, it will at times show a banner to the right. That way you know and the officer knows if you let them know it could be a new officer. This is a dangerous call, be careful. Some are lesser than others, potentially dangerous call. So it just tells you to check on them periodically. With the serious ones, we check on them every few minutes to make sure everything's good. That's my dog scratching in the background. Okay, so you input the officer who was sent to the call by you. The person working this site that night was Judith, so you send her. She'll tell you when she arrives. You put that in. Now this is designed as if it's a serious call and you need to send more than one officer, or there's two already on the site and they both respond. You put in the other officer's name and their arrival time. If it's really bad, then you can actually add in more officers in the same manner. Down here, you just input the information as it was given to you by the caller, and then you type that in here, return a couple of times. The officer tells you, I did these things, so you type that in. I'm just saving time here. And then you type in how they resolved the call, whatever was done. If the police were called, then you click here. EMS, fire, same. Input the police arrival time. The officer should have a report number for you. If not, ask for it. Cleared by, and it can be a 95 if it's by the Phoenix officer, 95P if it's an arrest made by the security officer, a warning, ticket, trespass, report, unable to locate the situation, unfounded report, and secured. For this one, it'll be report. Ignore this section because right now it's not functional with dispatchers. I'll show you anyway. It has an area where you can download, or upload photos or documents, but because the situation is elsewhere, it's not applicable for dispatchers to be able to use. So when you click submit, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to add to the database a fake call. But when you click submit, it'll go right back to this screen within a few seconds. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 seconds, but you'll see it rolling up here, a rolling circle, and then it'll go right back to this screen. So now we're going to try a officer initiated report. Pick the property where the officer is. It will tell you the parameters about the property, the requirements. If it's a room number, input it. address is almost never used unless they happens to be a patrolman and they have a particular address that you're not familiar with. The call type, you put that in. Now on this one, you're picking the officer who called you, so there is no time for the officer one. They are 99.9% of the time, they're going to already be there. So when you took the call by clicking this, that's the time they were there. If another officer goes, you pick them, you put the time in. Same with the narrative here. Same with the other resources. Same with cleared code. And submit. Goes right back to the initial screen. Site check. Okay, this is not intended for the patrol officer to call in, all north patrols are complete. This is supposed to be a per location entry. So I will make sure that's cleared up with them, and wanted to let dispatchers know that that's not the way that it's supposed to be input. So you would pick the property that they were doing the site check, who's calling it in, narrative if any. Put the narrative in if it lends some information to the process. You don't have to put in what I call fluff. There's no need for it. If it helps, put it in. If it doesn't help, don't put a narrative in. It's pretty clear that if you put nothing and then you clear it by secured, they check the site and nothing was wrong. So you hit submit and it goes right back to the first screen. Now shift related. Issue type. Officer was on duty late, held over, off duty mid shift like they got hurt or they were injured or there was a family emergency, and then unmanned. Depending on what you pick here, other boxes will open up for additional information. So you pick the officer that's calling off the property. I'm sorry. Not call off. Off duty held over. You pick the property. Why were they held over? Management request, site, incident, not relieved, or other. Anything other, you need to put a narrative in. Now, if you change this to off-duty mid-shift, these reasons change. Sent home, medical. So, depending upon what you pick here, your options change. Unmanned was a no-call, no-show, officer not located, schedule error, or other. So if it's an open site, you indicate who you sent to replace the officer. You indicate when they got there, and did the client lose any time? Well, if a supervisor said, I got it, I'll be there till they get there, then it would be no, covered by supervisor. These are all hourly issues. A quarter hour, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 0.75 would be 45 minutes. Then you put in whatever narrative is helpful for the situation and you hit submit. Go to call off. Same process. Property they called off from. Who was it? Why did they call off? Who did you send in their place? Did they lose any money? Did the client lose any time? Now this is a policy part right here. Did they call off less than 4 hours before shift? It's check no, because we're hoping for the best, that they're going to call in, with more than 4 hours to spare. If it is less than 4 hours, then you click yes, and it says, well, how long? It was only 2 hours. And then they submit, and it goes back to the original screen. Officer field transport. This is not designed to use when a patrolman fuels up a company car. That's done on a daily basis, and that's in their report. This is not to be done through the dispatch. This is for a site officer who needs assistance with some fuel because they can't get home, can't get to work, what have you. And a supervisor meets them and fuels their car with the company card. Or they can't get to work and a patrolman picks them up and takes them to or from work. That's what this feature is used for. The officer is who was it that needed who needed the fuel or the transport. So you pick whoever that would be. The supervisor, if they're driving the person somewhere, when they get in the car, they're supposed to give you their starting mileage. And when they drop them off, the ending mileage. And then it auto calculates 21 miles or whatever the mileage would be. Narrative, if needed. If not, then leave it blank. This section here is only used if the officer was fueling their car. So a supervisor went and fueled up somebody for $20. They're supposed to give you the last four of their Amex card used. And then in here, you put in the amount of money that was put on the card. Don't put the dollar sign, just the numbers. You hit submit. ATM run. You get a call and they say it's Bank of America. So you put in Bank of America. They will give you the address. This should actually be auto-picked. I'm going to try to change that. It will always be South Carolina. The zip code may change. It may not. Not really that important. The important parts are you got the call from St. Moritz or from the tech. When did you get that call? Because the clock starts when the call is received. So they called you at 3 o'clock. The target time where the tech is going to be on site and ready to work is 4 o'clock. So you get the tech's name, the last name of the tech, their phone number, the site number, and the work order number. These two things you have to put in. They have to give them to you. Who did you send on the call? You pick the person you're sending, and then you pick the time that the officer arrived, which should be within minutes of this target time. They have to be there very close to that target time. When the officer leaves their home, they're supposed to give you their starting mileage. When they arrive, their mileage when they get to the ATM call. Now, at this point right here, this screen is going to become inactive because you're going to be waiting until the call is over with. That's why you have the multiple tabs up. So you can take other calls when other ones are still ongoing. So you let this one sit, you hit your other tab, and you continue to take calls. If this one's in process and it's not finished yet, you go to your next tab and you continue calls like that. So the officer calls you and says, okay, I'm done here. And let's see, we'll say an hour. So this is when the call was done. It's important to put in the time that the officer got home. They're supposed to know to call you and say, hey, I'm home now. So, because they get paid until they get home. Now you notice when you add in the home time, the total time over here auto calculates. So it shows you it was 2.5 hours. When they get home, they're supposed to give you their mileage when they got home. When you enter that, just ignore this block here, but it auto calculates the total mileage at 100. Narrative, if needed. If not, It is. It's an ATM call, so typically there would be no narrative unless something happened. These would only be used if something bad happened on the ATM call. Hopefully, you'll never have to use them. It's pretty self-explanatory. If they go on an ATM call and you cleared it by secured, nothing happened. They fixed the unit, and that's it. You hit submit, and it goes back to this form. And that's pretty much it. If you look at it, mess with it a little bit. You can enter things. The only thing I ask is please don't hit submit on any calls that are fake that you're just testing the system out. Just don't submit them, because then it becomes part of the regular record. If you have any questions or comments on the log, just shoot me an email at argus@pssmbsc.com. Thanks.